Okay, let's try and understand Jackson structured programming with the help of the example that has been given in the book. Um, in the book, he has given us this receipt right here, and we're supposed to model this receipt into a Jackson structured diagram. Remember, Jackson structured programming is a diagrammatic way of showing the structure of a diagram. So what he has given us here is that he has given us this receipt. We are supposed to take a look at this receipt and draw a Jackson structure diagram for this receipt. Now, as we can see that this is some sort of an order form. A customer walks in and he places an order, so we're supposed to note down the customer name and the customer address, and then he's going to order some products, right? So we're going to note down the products using their IDs, and we are also going to note down the corresponding quantities that he has ordered. So the customer is going to give us different products. We're going to note down the IDs and the corresponding quantities for each one of these products, right? And so this is like a second phase in collecting the order. The first phase was taking customer details, taking down customer details, and the second phase involved taking the order, right? In the third phase, we are supposed to calculate our totals, right? So we're going to include postage and packing. We're going to finally calculate the total price, right? And after this phase of calculating totals, the final phase is the payment phase. And in the payment phase, there are two options, right? We can pay through the check or we can pay through the bank card. So we've understood what this order form is all about. What are the different kinds of data that needs to be noted down, what are the calculations that need to be made, and what are the payment options that we have available, right? You can either pay through a check or you can pay through a bank card. Okay, let's quickly take a look at the solution diagram, try and understand it, and then we're going to be doing some more problems. Okay, so this is our Jackson structured data diagram for the order form that we just saw. Okay, and as you can see here that he has at the top level he's explained that this problem is about the order form, right? And we're trying to model the order form here, and then he has decomposed this, he's broken this down into 4 sections, right? So we have the header and the order body, and then we have a section related to totals, and finally collection of payments, right? So these are the 4 different modules that is broken the order form into, right? And let's just take a look at the order form, right? This order form is has these 4 parts. This is the header, right? And this is what he's calling the body, right? And this is related to payments. Sorry, no, this is related to totals, right? And this is related to payment, right? So for each of these sections we are taking for the top 2 sections, for these two, for the header and the body, right? We are going to be collecting data, right? So for the header, for example, we're going to be collecting the customer name, inputting the customer name and the customer address. And if we go down here, we can see that he has further refined the header and he has indicated what kind of data we are going to be collecting. We're going to be collecting data related to a customer, right, in this section, and we're going to be collecting the customer name first, and then we are going to be collecting the customer address. So there is a sequence here. First we are going to be collecting the customer name, and then we are going to be collecting the customer address. So this is what we call an example going left to right. This is what we call an example of sequence. The first operation gets carried out first and the second one gets carried out second. So as far as the customer is concerned, we'll first collect the customer name and then the customer address, and this is an example of sequence. We're going to take a look into sequence in more detail later on also. We're going to be doing some other examples, but for now I hope you've understood this. So we've solved this part related to the header, right? So we've solved this part related to the header, and now we want to solve the body part, right? And in the body part, essentially we're going to be taking two inputs. We're going to be collecting the product ID, and as far as the order is concerned, we're going to be collecting the quantity, right? That's what we're going to be collecting, right? And what we should also note is that we may have to note down several product IDs, right? So a product ID may need to be written down 3 times or 4 times if the customer is buying 4 products, right? So when we are doing something a multiple number of times, when there is repetition involved, then we use a steric sign to indicate that this data item may need to be input multiple times. And this small thing here might not be very visible to you, but he's drawn an asterisk here, right? So this is how we need to show, right? We need to say product ID, and we need to draw the asterisk sign here. I'm sorry, I'm not drawing it very clearly. Let me draw that again. So we need to do something like this. We need to say product ID, and in the top corner we are going to draw our asterisk sign to indicate that this is what needs to be done multiple times. We may need to note down the product ID multiple times, and if we are going to note down the product ID multiple times, that also means for each product ID, because we're going to need to note the quantity, therefore the quantity also needs to be noted down multiple times. It can be done multiple times, and this here is where he is indicated with a asterisk sign that the quantity data item may need to be input more than once in the order body, right? In the order body. So we've explained the order body in detail, and this fact that we may need some repetition here, right? Repetition or iteration, right? Is shown using a asterisk sign in Jackson structured programming, right? So asterisk sign is used to show repetition or iteration. And then from here the next phase is related to totals, and we can see that in total, first we need to calculate postage and packing, the price for postage and packing for the products that have been ordered, and then we need to calculate the total price, right? So the total price might include the sum of all of these prices, and plus postage and packing, and finally we're going to have a total price. So we're not worried about how the calculations are going to be done here. All we've done is we've shown that the totals would require the postage and packing to be entered on the order form, right? What price that is going to be, how much that's going to cost us, and then finally we're going to calculate the total price. Now this needs to be done once only, right? So we need to calculate the postage and packing once, and we need to calculate the total price once only. So this cannot be an example of repetition, but this can be an example of sequence, right? Going left to right, we first need to calculate the postage and packing, and then we need to calculate the total price, right? So this would be an example of sequence, right? So this is also an example of sequence, right? This here is also an example of sequence. This here is also an example of sequence. Certain steps need to be carried out in a certain sequence, right? And then finally, once we are done with the totals, it's time for the payment section, right? And as we can see here in the payment section, we have two options. We can either collect payment through check, or we can collect payment through a bank card. But there is a choice, either we're going to take payment through a check, or we are going to take a payment through a bank card. So it's going to be one of these. So it's more like when you write a program code then you use statements like if else, right? So you are either going to be choosing this or you're going to be choosing this, right? So it's going to be either one of these, right? So either we're going to be choosing a check or we're going to be choosing a bank card, and this is called selection. This is called selection, right? We're choosing, so only one of these options is going to get executed. Therefore, to show that a selection is going on here, we are either going to be going for the check option or the bank card option. A circle is used. Now this here is where he's drawn a circle, but you may not be able to see it because it's been drawn very small, and this here is also a circle indicating that a bank card may be selected or may not be selected, or a check may be selected or may not be selected, right? So as far as payment is concerned, one of these options is going to get selected, and that is indicated using a circle, right, along with the name of the data, whatever data item it is, right? So it's check, and is a circle here indicating that this is an example of selection. So this is where selection is taking place. This completes our modeling of the order form, and hopefully you've understood. This has given you some meaning, some insight into what a Jackson structure diagram does. So this is a Jackson structured data diagram.